Good morning, friends. I'm going to make this kind of a retrospective on the fall term of 2025. The way School of Tomorrow is set up in my own mind, and that's where School of Tomorrow is set up, is it goes 4 terms a year, always starting on the official equinox or solstice of the season. So the next, say, winter solstice is December 19th. No, excuse me, Wanderers is celebrating it on December 19th. But the 21st is the official date of the next winter solstice, and that will be mark the beginning of School of Tomorrow's winter term, and so on. So we're still in the fall term. And looking back, let's just start with the fall term slides. What I'm going to do quick here is overview and then a couple deep dives on some actual Jupyter Lab notebooks, which I want to reiterate. In this school, we do have a coding language. I use Python, and I think if you wanted to differentiate different curricula as to how they present synergetics, what characterizes my curriculum in contrast to any of the others I know about is it's Python intensive. You can replace that with a different coding language or not use a coding language, and still you would still have a synergetics curriculum. You don't have to have a coding language. Bucky didn't use a coding language, partly because he started his work in 1920s, before there were such things really for civilian use. But as we moved along and got into the NASA era, a lot of the computations for Bucky's works in terms of domes and structures out in architecture land, those did get assistance from machine computing, but to whatever level was available at the time, right? By the way, a necessary ruin about the destruction of the Union Tank Car Dome is probably my favorite movie about Buckminster Fuller to date. And it's not even really about him. It's partly why I like it, but it shows how he swoops in and takes credit for stuff, and I'm not faulting him for that. I think he's he did his homework. He did get the patents, whether you say it's original or not. He did do the business of domes, and he did it well. And there are millions of domes out there. I exaggerate. So this fall, we talked about quadrays a lot, Cascadia synergetics a lot. On the quadrays front, there was Quadcraft still ongoing, which is a spec for computer games that want to make more use of the IVM. Cascadian entomology, ongoing theme. We've got a lot of evolutionary biology coming always into our namespace through what I'll call the active inference portal, which is adjacent, focusing on systems, focusing on mainly wholes more than the sums of their parts. You know, we're always being surprised by whole behaviors where you wouldn't have predicted. It's like, I didn't see that coming. Now, active inference is kind of a surprise management discipline almost. Doesn't eliminate surprise in your life. Don't ever worry about that. But it gives you ways of thinking and talking about surprise, and therefore it connects to what I call casino math, which is a template for thinking realistically, anticipatorily about what's coming. Because actually, that's the only thing you can react to. What's happened. You can react to what's happened, but what's happened has already happened. So it makes sense that anticipatory is a big component of what we value in life in terms of systems. Predictions. We're always talking about the future and predictions in data science, and that's because, in one sense, all we have is the future. That's all that we have to change. But then, in another sense, we don't have the future. It's not here yet. But then we don't have the past either. In the language of the Markov chain and so forth, there's this very thin layer between past and present where everything really happens. You could call it the now layer. And on either side of it, we can talk about the Markov blanket. What happened right up to now and what's going to happen immediately next. It's almost like a differentiation problem. It's almost like calculus, isn't it? It's almost like physics. It's almost like deterministic models, and yet we know from chaos, from Wolfram, from a lot of math, that there are no shortcuts sometimes. The guarantee is not that all systems are predictable, but that simulation may be possible. Just maybe you can't speed it up. So one big thing that happens is, like, when I say you can't speed it up, it could be that there's no way to simulate these phenomena accurately on into the future because the only computation complex enough is the phenomenon itself, is what I'm saying. Some things can't be simulated, like the weather, beyond, say, 15 days at the very most, because of the way things are set up in sort of the new kind of science way that we learned from Wolfram and so on. Incommensurability and so on. So a big trip by the cohort of Dante and Casey going out to the East Coast and visiting Bear Island and going to Rhode Island School of Design. That's part of what's in this album. Also, there's some talk by me looking back. I'm doing a lot of retrospective, so you'll find stuff in here about design science toys, Est, Werner Erhard, all that kind of stuff. Kind of going over similar territory to what's in the big thick bio of Bucky that came out, say, 3 years ago? Alex Navala-Lee's Inventor of the Future, is that what it's called? A cautionary tale in some ways. Hey, it was high risk, but I don't think Bucky, by any conventional, Buckminster Fuller, was by any conventional measure a failure. You find that in a lot of accounts. It's like, oh, he tried so hard, but his car never became the car, his house never became the house. But what if the business was to put the prototypes out there, knowing full well that this is not going to be the car or the house, right? Like, what if it's all going somewhat according to plan? People would need to learn synergetics more. And is that happening? Because that was kind of his goal, and it hasn't been a failure there. And I'm saying, well, judging from School of Tomorrow, looking back, fall term, all this kind of what's going on, this is a record of one of my slide decks here, going through real quickly, talking about some of the political stuff going on at the same time. I'd say we succeeded in that sense. We do have the curriculum we need, and it's not like it's finished evolving or anything. It's in its very beginning stages. But I'd say 50 years out from the publication of Synergetics, we have every sign of a working, evolving curriculum. Now, just to look at a couple recent notebooks at the end here, do check out that fall term folder if you want to catch up on what we were up to. Building a volumes table. I came back to this notebook. I noticed it was floating around, and I noticed it was not working in a lot of ways. There was broken parts, and I had just come off working on Hypersnakes, which is in Hilbert space and 4D in that namespace where you can have 5D, 6D, 7D, and it doesn't ever stop. Up around 8, 9D, they're not sure what the longest hypersnake is that's possible. And I leave it for you to follow these Tom Ace links into the whole literature, and also this XKCD cartoon is a good intro to this mathematical challenge. Think of it as kind of a Martin Gardner sort of open question, still amenable to breakthroughs, and there's algorithms involved, and again, it's computer intensive. And my little Python algorithms around the edges here are, again, more of a workout for those of you who are eager to learn a coding language, and Python in particular. Now, you may know several coding languages, and you may look down on Python because of X, Y, or Z. I've had students in the eighth grade, for example, who were pretty much C++ snobs, but I could tell why, given the kind of thing they were doing, speed related. If you've been into the world of languages for a while, you know that it's not one to rule them all. In my mind, there is no contention for the language. People are always talking about, is Python going to win? Is it all going to be Python someday? And it's, to me, that's like, oh, you're confusing this with religion or something. We call that somewhat derogatorily a religious war. When you get into a conversation about which computer language is really the best, if you're an wise old geek, you tend to walk away from those because it's not interesting in the least. It's not even a good question. People always want to know who's going to win. Like this, it's this very simple worldview that's how it's about what it's about. Someone utterly loses, someone utterly wins. That happens sometimes, but it's not even desirable most of the time. It's not even what you're looking for. It's not even a goal. I'd say that's true with synergetics. Am I trying to force a lot of people out of work because we're going to replace them with synergetics like AI? It's like, no, no. There's plenty real estate out there when you're talking cyberspace. There's room for this stuff. Coming backwards from the bottom, when I say this stuff, I'll just focus on this table and then quickly scroll up. This table, the volumes table. This is the heart of synergetics. Now you won't recognize some of these algebraic expressions on the rightmost column most likely because I let SymPy, a computer algebra system, just figure out what it thought was the simplest expression for these volumes based on a starting point involving phi, which is also not synergetic. Something David Koski and I have been doing is saying, let's throw phi back into the mix now that Buggy's taking almost everything out so that he can have a sort of a fresh start, free of a lot of things like most of even the words polyhedron. He fights against the jargon that we use. He fights against everything. And we say, okay, great fight. It's been published. We see what you're doing with that. Some people will follow that. But let's put phi back and see what happens. And where we put phi back is not just in expressing distances, but more in expressing the volumes. And I'll take, for example, the S module. It's phi to the negative fifth over 2. Now you can express that in different ways. And the E module we express in terms of a root 2 over 8, but then there's a phi times phi to the negative 3. Even phi gets into the expression for the E module, partly because we're starting with the super RT and shrinking it down to get this particular E module. And then we build up all our volumes from the S and the E pretty much. And so that's why the volumes table, although correct, is going to be a little bit alien, even if you're into synergetics pretty deeply, because you haven't taken this precise route before. And just to end up, just showing you some more of the Koski research, if phi becomes your focus, which it has been for him his whole life, then, just doodling around with phi a lot, check out these expressions for square root of 2 and square root of 3 in terms of phi. Kind of interesting. So if you're already what we might call a phi nut, and I know there are a lot of you out there, don't neglect synergetics anymore as phi-less, because it is no longer phi-less. It is high fidelity. Ha ha. Okay, so that's looking back. Fall term, I hope that was edifying in some ways. There's a lot more, of course, that went on, and for that, check out my videos of this period, this time period. In fact, I would say check out all my 2025 videos if you want to get a really thorough education from the School of Tomorrow, but you don't necessarily want that. It's an option. There are a lot of us out there now teaching this stuff, so I am one source among many, and I appreciate that there's variety and that we don't all take the same approach by any means. That's where we expect synergy to arise going forward. Feel free to brief yourself on all this, jump in. Recall that there are slideshows behind a lot of what I do. My approach, the School of Tomorrow approach, has been to put slide decks online in the form of Google Slides. That was from the Dead Mathematician Society earlier this year. I gave a presentation to just a pilot test presentation to the faculty, and then we decided let's not bewilder the poor community college students with this really exotic material that pretty much nobody knows, which is kind of partly why it's fun to teach it. It's so I call it being orange and black pilled. Again, that's kind of part of my idiolect. Anyway, interesting stuff. Worth becoming a teacher of it is what I'm saying. Not just a student, but you have to be a student first to get up to where you want to be able to teach it. Okay, so looking back, join us for the winter term starting December 21st, 2025, and I'll see you guys down the road.